Oh, and suddenly it went dead. Right, some of you may notice if you've seen that trailer, that's not the actual music to it. We have a different piece on it, but never mind. It's my fault entirely for putting it together as a last-minute addition. Okay, good morning, folks. Welcome back to LaveCon. I know there was a slight delay in terms of doing our general introduction this morning because Foz wasn't in, but I'm now here, so I can welcome you back and take you into our first item of today, which is the update on development with Pheonix Point, which is the game that I'm lead writer on. I'm joined by our community manager, Kevin Hill, also known as Unstable Voltage, and he's going to take us through the latest releases that we've had in terms of the build, and we're here to talk about a couple of questions, if anybody's got them, and also to give you a bit of a fill-in as to where we're at in terms of stuff. How's it going, Kev? You got your troops in?
Yeah, so this is the demo build that we took to E3 with us a few weeks ago back in LA, and it's still not feature complete, this particular build, but we are working on adding the fog of war system, which is the main thing that we've put in to this build, which is why everything's quite dark and you can't see where all the bad guys are at the beginning, like you could on previous builds, and we're just defending this new Jericho power plant in the middle of the map here. So I have played this a few times before, but that by no means a guarantee that things are going to go well.
So for those of you that don't necessarily know about Pheonix Point, this is the turn-based tactical battle game that is being released by Snapshot Games and Julian Gollop, who's our boss. We've had a lot of fun over the last couple of years doing the development and given a regular sort of feedback here as to where we're at. Now, it's coming to crunch time. So all my writing has to be done by Friday. So, yeah, it's, things are a little intense at the moment. So we're editing, we're putting stuff together to improve the bits and pieces that are there. The evolution of the graphics and the art, just as you start, it's one of the things I find when I'm working on something, when you see what other creative people do with what you're working on, it is pretty incredible. And certainly with this, just seeing some of the skinning, the rendering, the way in which some of these things come out, it's been pretty amazing. We're nearly there. We're nearly there in terms of what's there. So our release date is scheduled for September. Do we have a day in September?
September the 3rd.
Okay, early September. Oh, couldn't it be late September?
I think it's a Tuesday.
Oh, okay. 2 o'clock.
Whenever we remember to push the button, usually. Yeah.
Or when we're ready up to the absolute nth of that particular day, more likely, I expect. So the development's gone well. We've got a variety of different features. The current situation at the moment is that we're planning the plotting. We've already done all the endings. We've already done all the intro. We're actually in the middle of trying to get us from one bit to the other bit. So we know where you start and we know where you finish. So we're currently working on the different choice mechanics within that structure, which is quite interesting. But as you can see, the actual tactical battle system is pretty much there. It's more now the strategy system, the geoscape, isn't it, and the other bits and pieces that are kind of needing the sort of finishing in terms of what we have. But the interface has been well worked through a long period of time, working out where we put buttons. I know there was a change recently, wasn't there, to the bars?
Yeah, so we've moved the action points bar down here into the bottom left-hand corner now, and the UI is something that's always undergoing tweaks, and that will probably still be happening right up until the day we push the button. There's always improvements you can make to, ease of use for the user and the way that data is presented. We're always trying to find a way to make it really convey all the information that it needs to across to the player, but also not be cluttered and just, making a mess of the screen.
What's your general impression, having played it a few times over the different builds? What's your general impression in terms of seeing the evolution of what we have? Thinking as a player, because both of us have come to this as fans of the genre to start with, and fans of Julian's work. What would you highlight as being the gradual improvements?
Certainly, balance has improved. That isn't something that we normally do until the end. I knew that was going to be now. Balance isn't something that we normally do until the end of development, but we have been doing bits and pieces as we go through, and it's sort of finding that right mix between where the game's not so brutal that you get destroyed the moment you start, and obviously not so easy that there's no challenge to it. And also, every time we bring out a new build, we're adding new enemy types, new mutations for them, which means new abilities, new equipment and skills for the soldiers as well. And because the original XCOM that Julian made didn't have class systems, and obviously that was something that Firaxis very much sort of introduced to the genre, this is that sort of hybrid part of it for us. So it's so nice to be able to have all of those different unique abilities and unique skills with the classes, and that original time unit system where you can move around one square at a time or fire several times in a single turn.
And I think I'm noticing, certainly from the different builds that we've demoed, with what we're looking at now, the return fire element is calmed down somewhat in terms of what's there. It might be that, because we're not seeing that many enemies at this stage, but return fire is a great mechanic for what we're doing, but it certainly looks a bit calmer.
Yeah, it has had an adjustment because, and I was personally one of the people that was complaining about it constantly, because I just felt really hard done to every time I took a shot and just got mowed down by a hail of gunfire. So it does still exist, but I think the range has been decreased a little bit, and they're not quite so trigger happy. But again, that's something that might change in the balancing pass, and you don't usually balance until everything's in. So.
We are at the stage as well where, in terms of the development, and I'm just noting that with some of the things that you're showing on screen, we've got to the stage where some of the detail is going in relation to the equipment. So last week I was working on the equipment descriptions. Now, what I was saying earlier, if anyone was here for our care home presentation, one of my favourite things, my personal favourite things about Elite, has been the fact that seeing some of my text in the tourist system. The lovely thing with this game is that, having written the equipment descriptions, seeing all the equipment descriptions go into the game and knowing that you've worked on them is great. And they're particularly flavoured. So we're doing sort of summary descriptions at the moment, which are, what the gun does, what the explosive does. And then you have the patent description, which is kind of flavoured to the faction. So all of the New Jericho descriptions are very much corporate, and all of the Disciples of Anu descriptions are very much religious. So, the sacred gun, and so on and so forth. So it's quite good fun in terms of putting those together. So that's been part of the writing experience in the last week or two. The maps now are sort of at a reasonable size. Do you remember when we had the first map demo? The huge map.
Yeah, it's one of those things that people kept saying, we want really big maps. We want maps that are bigger than XCOM. But then you have the problem that you can spend 20 minutes sort of searching every closet for that last enemy. So, and performance is an issue as well, of course. Unlike the old original XCOM, which was very much isometric 2D, and using sprites, because there's so much physics simulation going on and everything's 3D modeled, you do have to keep optimization in mind as well. So big sprawling maps aren't ideal for that.
Yeah, I was remembering the one trooper who was exploring this thing, and you're like, how many turns it's going to take you? 20, 30, just to get across the thing. But the nice thing, I guess, is though that there is the potential for a larger map. Later down the line, it's appropriate for either for the game or for a particular scenario, which is quite cool. We're trying to bring character. It's another thing that's a little bit of an innovation with Pheonix Point, as opposed to Julian's previous games. Anyone a Laser Squad player in here? Oh, one. Okay, one or two. Right. I always remember those the names of those soldiers. Corporal Joneland, Trooper Zephyr, Trooper Anderson, who became Corporal Anderson in the last missions. So I always remember the names of the soldiers, and actually we knew nothing about them other than the names that were there. And of course, you're playing on the Amstrad or the Spectrum, and that was what you had. With this, there is a little bit more in terms of character in a variety of ways. Obviously, your own troopers. We've done a name generation database, and you have a set of assigned names, but you can also customize those names as you want to. But the NPCs of the game, i.e. the characters of the game, there are characters mentioned throughout the research, throughout through the missions. Some of the NPCs talk to you and can be characters you can find. And also there are characters who are communicating with you in relation to your alliance. So you'll be talking to Tobias West if you decide that you like New Jericho, or you'll be talking to the Exalted if you decide you like the Disciples of Anu, or you'll be talking to Barnabas, the artificial intelligence, if you decide you like Sanhedrian. So it gives you a slightly different flavor towards the way in which the different characters work out. And as you can see here, some things stay the same. We've still got the manual targeting system. Fairly effective there.
Shotguns usually are at that sort of distance,
yeah. Fair enough. I don't think he's coming back, is he?
I hope not, but you never know. Oh, he's got two friends with him, so that's slightly problematic.
Oh dear. Okay. And we've been looking at some of the different alien types. From my end these days, because I don't see quite so much of what they do in the game, I see more of how they're described. So and how that's translated. It's particularly interesting to sort of see and to think about how you communicate fear and communicate a threat. Because I think I've said before, I'm less interested in the numbers because I think the numbers are a bit more about the sort of the tactical element of what's there. I'm more interested in the sort of visceral quality. What's that?
Just trying to shoot his gun arm off, but I'm actually getting lucky here because I'm hitting both of them at the same time. Which is the advantage of the free aim system, because any bullets that miss this guy's arm are probably likely to hit his friend behind him.
It's pretty good.
There we go, we did hit both of them again.
And we did, a couple of weeks ago, we went over all the grunts, didn't we? The sound effects. The response commands from all the soldiers. They're all still a little bit silent at the moment. I'm not sure if the lists were finalised. I think we are going ahead with those now.
Yeah, the recording just hasn't been done yet,
but that's finalised.
I'm unlikely to get
and again, another opportunity to try and get narrative flavour into the game rather than it being just yes sir, no sir. It's some of the responses are quite interesting. I like to think that StarCraft's an influence on anybody that writes grunts. Why do you keep poking me? Well, that's Warcraft. But the ones in StarCraft with you 3 or 4 times, and then you get them to say this, this sort of slightly cross phrase in terms of what's there. So yeah, we haven't gone that way really because Pheonix Point is a bit darker, so it doesn't have that kind of comedic tone. But willpower does affect what is said. So if your character is particularly exhausted, they tend to say different things, like "keep them off me" or "I can't take any more," or stuff like that, as opposed to the slightly cooler response that you get from a trooper who's a little bit less traumatized, which is I think is a nice touch, a nice way of keeping it immediate in terms of what we're trying to do. Their turn, is it?
It is.
How are you doing?
Not too bad. They're missing a few shots. My sniper's up on the high ground. He's hidden behind some cover, so they're struggling to take him out. But there's the Chiron has turned upon the map now, and this is their sort of mobile artillery unit. So I always hope that he misses up on the walls. There's a little bit of slowdown there, but obviously it's not really optimized for my laptop. So.
So just take us through this particular build. This is the E3 build, isn't it? It's a little bit less complete than the last backer build, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, so in essence, it is the last backer build. It's building on top of backer build 4, but this is a custom scenario where we've kind of cherry-picked the map and the units and the equipment that they have. Mostly because when we build a show floor demo, we want something that can be played in a fairly set amount of time, and we want to be able to control the difficulty. Of course, with the finished game, a lot of it is procedurally generated, so the maps are always going to be random. You're never going to be quite sure what enemies you're going to get on each map either, so it just makes it a little more tricky on a show floor environment. But for this build, we've completely disabled the strategic layer as well.
And I think that's where you'll hopefully see the difference between this and XCOM. You know, we don't have POI at all, do we? Or point of activation, isn't it? Or points of interest.
Yeah, not on.
Yeah.
Not on this
So we don't do. So essentially, where with XCOM you would have aliens activated at particular times. At the start of the scenario, these guys basically start in, don't they?
Yeah,
they're not fixed.
They're spawned on the map.
Yeah,
basically.
they're spawned on the map as the scenario starts, or at key junctures, but they're not in a fixed position. So that means it can create more variancy in terms of where you encounter them, rather than being in sort of set cinematic moments in terms of what's there. And Scarab or Armadillo, is that?
That
Scarab.
one is the Scarab.
So yeah, so interesting narrative point here. The vehicles are actually, most of them have an AI in them. So most of them are driven by artificial intelligences. So you don't have to have a driver in there, and that's part of the plot. Basically, they were almost sort of let free from captivity, weren't they? In the history, we have this thing where they were just released, so they all wandered off. And
go and roam free.
Yeah, exactly, until you run out of fuel. So there are some of the plot revolves around your interaction with AIs and whether you're working with artificial intelligences who are part of some of the factions, or you're working with these sort of rogue artificial intelligences who might become your allies at a different point in time in terms of what's there. So yeah, it's certainly been an interesting process, and we're still a little way to go in terms of some of the elements, but it is pretty amazing to see some of these things being envisaged. And have we got a new? Yeah.
So this is the Queen, which is one of our
seeing
sort of
in
boss
silhouette
creatures.
at the moment.
Yeah, she's hiding in the darkened corner of the map there. So we're still tweaking with the lighting. Again, this was something that was literally put in just before the build went live. So. But we got a lot of good feedback about the sort of the darker environment, and a lot of it tries to be a bit of a throwback to that original sense of XCOM being shot at from the darkness, having bullets come at you and not being able to tell quite where they've come from. Because we've got the fog of war now, if you actually know where an enemy is but you can't see them, you get a little indicator that says, well, you know something's here because you can hear it or it's fired a shot at you. And because we've got this free aim ballistic system, if you think you know where something is, you can shoot towards it, even if you can't see it. You might get lucky and hit it.
Poor Scarab, taking a hit there.
Rather that take the hits than my men. So.
Fair. Can't feel pain, so I'm sure it's fine. So there are a variety here of different bits, and you can see. I was hoping that the Queen would come out, but we'll probably see her next round, I guess.
Oh, you'll definitely see more of her.
One of the things that we had quite a lot of feedback on was the Queen's head, didn't we?
Yeah, that caused a lot of mixed feelings, actually.
Yeah. And it's interesting to just see the development of it. Whether it, the viewpoint is interesting in itself, but the point here is that actually seeing the development of the assets is very interesting as things go through. I know there's quite a lot that we've made, and then we've improved the environment, improved the design, and actually some of the things that you make no longer fit. So you have to sort of keep with what the main sort of creation of the game is doing. Certainly with some of the initial stuff that we demoed here. I don't know if you remember demoing the first backer build. Quite a lot of those sort of guys in sort of Mad Max style
Oh yeah, the
bits and
the
bobs.
original prototype, which are designs that we still quite like internally.
Yeah,
And we're always
yeah.
looking for ways that we can possibly use them, because we had considered them for like neutral havens,
Yeah.
but it's just making everything fit together, and
Yeah, exactly.
the style has to gel.
Yeah, and they've got to be compatible with what we've got on the screen. You don't want to see somebody who's less pixelated or more pixelated than somebody else. So it's really been a fascinating process, and I've not had this kind of level of kind of visceral involvement in this kind of development before. So it's been really interesting to see how that's come through. And in terms of our partnerships, we're going to be Xbox and PC as soon as we get out the gate, hopefully, aren't we?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's our most common question about that?
What about the Xbox and PC?
Usually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Xbox, PC, why no PS4?
Why no PS4? Yeah, it's very common. There's quite a simple answer for that. I mean, when we originally started this project, it was going to be PC and Mac and Linux, which we did drop because there was lack of interest and some support issues. But quite simply, because we entered into a partnership with Microsoft to be on Game Pass, they wanted an Xbox version. And because the architecture between the Xbox and Windows is quite similar, it's a more straightforward port than the PS4. We have said it before on Facebook. Not everybody gets to see that. We would like to do a PS4 version. It will probably come, but it won't be at release. Yeah,
there needs to be a negotiation, doesn't there, in terms of making that agreement between the console and the company. Which we internally as the creatives and the sort of the players, the developers, we want it to be as everywhere, as much as we possibly can.
It's a process. I mean, obviously it's extra development time, so the more different platforms you take on at one time, the longer development's going to take. But of course, you do have to work with the company. You have to get the development kits from them to be able to build on. You've got all the certification part of it as well, which is not as straightforward as releasing something on PC.
Yeah. So quite a lot of detail there. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense, and you can see from Kev going through here, and you're doing pretty well.
Not as well as I could be. It's starting to.
I was a bit worried for you just there with the artillery. I was thinking, because the camera immediately moved to your two guys, and I was thinking, they're going to cop it.
They've taken a hit or two.
Yeah, and the scarab's not looking too pretty.
There's a lot of bleeding going on here.
So you may have seen the technician at work. The technicians are medical and repair unit with his extra arms, he's particularly good in close combat too, isn't he? Because of the extra appendages.
Yeah, he can stun people, which makes him have a little bit more utility.
So there's a variety here in terms of the bits and pieces of different stuff. We have the standard assault. We've got a heavy. We've got a sniper class. But there are one or two things in there that are a little bit different. Okay, so hopefully you've kind of seen what's here. What I want to do is I'm gonna man the mic. Okay. I'm going to step out and man the mic. And are you okay to take questions? And
sure.
I'll reply if they come to me.
Hopefully I can, give some good answers for them as well.
Okay, all right. So you carry on destroying the alien threat and saving the world, and I'll pick the mic up and see if anybody's got anything they want to ask.
Hopefully we'll run out of questions before I run out of men.
Okay. Are there any questions? There we go. That'll be me. Right. Any questions that you've got? Any questions that you've got for us? I'm such an idiot with it. You think I was completely untechnical. Any questions that you've got for us? Anything you want to ask? Anything about the development and how it's gone? I'll come over.
Hi, Kev. On the subject of the UI, I played XCOM 2, and I think sometimes it'd be nice to see a row of character portraits of your soldiers. Which ones have got action points left, which ones haven't, so you can sort of plan a bit with your squad. Is there any plans to do that on this version?
Yeah, I mean, again, something that we want to do, like at the moment on the left-hand side here, you can see we do, because we've got more information that we also need to convey with these soldiers. Firstly, because they can have individual body parts injured and they can have equipment damaged. So we want to have the ability to also represent that as well, so you can see when you've got damaged limbs. Whereas the Firaxis XCOM allows squads of up to 6 without mods, we're going to have squads of up to 16.
Right.
So it can be quite difficult to sort of get all of that on the screen without taking it up. But I mean, we have just very recently been having a discussion about how much information is immediately available to the player without having to go into menus or mouse over things. So it is something that we're aware of, and hopefully we'll have a solution to that before release.
Cool, thanks.
I'd add, we have literally just in the last 3 weeks finalised the character portraits for the cast in the plot. So actually the concept artists have done, so when you're in the geoscape, you get email messages and you get them from particular characters. So that area of kind of having, character portrait, they're already designing a version of it, if you can see what I mean. Yeah, you want the soldiers. No, I totally get it. Okay, anything else anybody wants to ask?
Technical question. Is this a custom engine or?
It's actually built in Unity. So we're working closely with Unity to get optimizations done. We've also got other partners that we're working with, like Intel and AMD. And one of our programmers, someone who's worked with Julian for many years on different projects, also worked on the code for Unity itself. So he's really able to offer us a lot of insight into squeezing every last drop of juice out of this engine.
Can you tell us any more about the free aim system and how difficult that was to implement and balance?
Yeah, so it's something that's gone through a few iterations because it was something that Julian always wanted to have in there. It was something that he toyed with in a game that was unreleased, which was Dreamland Chronicles Freedom Ridge. That was it. So it was basically like a 3D version of XCOM Julian was working on before Mythos Games dissolved. It was eventually bought out by Altair Interactive and was turned into the UFO series. And we've seen similar systems in things like Valkyria Chronicles and things like that. The biggest issue that we have with the free aim system at the moment is that whenever you can see an enemy and you can take a shot, so I've got a perfect example right here. If I just take aim with my sniper, the default action is just a snapshot like you'd have in XCOM. And then I can zoom in, and then that gives me the ability to fine control where the shot goes, and I see some extra information. And one of the things that we want to do is make it so that the player doesn't feel like they always have to go into the free aim mode, because it does slow things down a little bit. You're taking that time to fine-tune the aim. So it's finding that balance between, well, yes, it'll give me a better shot, but maybe I can have an advantage if I just take a snapshot, like maybe I can shoot more times or do more damage or something like that. Again, that's something that we still hoping to fix in balance of things. But it does allow for some really cool tactical scenarios, because when you've got something like the sniper here, you can pick off the the squishiest body parts that you're guaranteed to hit. You can disable a grenade launcher or a machine gun on the enemy rather than having to kill them. So there's definitely a lot of tactical value to it.
Any other questions?
I may need to address this question to Alan rather than to the front, but you were talking a little bit about bringing character to your soldiers, and the soldiers are more than just a name. For me, one of the defining concepts of the genre is the soldiers having their own story that builds up. Have you been able to get any of that into the game itself for recording epic moments and building a story for them?
Difficult one. I'm going to go sit down. I'm going to answer this one from there. It's a little easier. Okay, so... Okay, so, right, yeah. It's a tricky thing. It's a really tricky balance, and the trickiness of the balance is, and this is something I have had to learn as a steep learning curve through this process. Writing for games is always about economy. It's always about trying to squeeze as much into as little a space as you possibly can. You certainly, as a writer, I hadn't realized how much the real estate of the screen is a premium thing, and how much, if you're not careful, you can write that doesn't mean anything. You end up putting stuff together that means nothing at all. So, yes, in answer to what you've said, yes, there are narratives in relation to some of the soldiers. In relation to all of the soldiers, or the soldiers that are yours, the issue of that narrative is there are three problems. One is that narrative is created by you, as in your progress through the game. And we cannot predict what you will do. The second is that there is a large need and a large interest in being able to customize those soldiers themselves. So the minute you have the opportunity to change a name, it creates a technical challenge for us in terms of what we're doing. And then thirdly, you've got to have the ability to put all this into a system that fits in with what everybody else is doing in terms of the development of the gameplay itself. So there is some narrative progression element for some soldiers. You will see that there are one or two individuals who have been characters through the game are able to develop as they go through. In terms of the actual progression, these soldiers do progress in terms of experience. We have that. That's a genre staple. So, in terms of this design, Kev's already talked about the leveling and the other elements. Those are certainly there. We certainly want to try and create more opportunity for that narrative quality to establish itself. But there is a level of anonymity as well that this game will have that's kind of similar to other games of its type. But you're also going to find, and if you've had a look at the Geoscape already, there are events that occur where your troopers go to things and quite strange things happen. They aren't necessarily just fights. I think the orgy event comes up every time, doesn't it?
It does.
So many people comment on bless Jonas for writing that in there.
Yeah, that's Jonas all over it, really.
Yeah. He's done most of the events. I've done a few of the events for the event system. But, you have these slightly quirky things occur where your troopers go and visit somewhere and something has happened and there's a situation and you make some choices about what's there. So certainly in terms of you tracking the narrative of what your characters are doing, it's all in there. You can see that they've had all these experiences and are telling a very different story. That event system is kind of designed so you'll play through it and you'll have a completely different experience each time in terms of what your choices will be. In terms of the personalization of the specific characters, though, that's a trade. It will have to, and those compromises are being made at the moment, which is, it's like, plucking your own nails out. It's hard, and actually it's necessary. Professionally, I know it's necessary, but it's a hard thing to do. So that's a really long answer. Okay, I've put the microphone down, but there were any more questions? Did anybody want to ask anything else? Okay, well, thank you all very much, and I think we're about done for now. We've got the next event is your Drabbles closing, correct? You're doing the readings at 1. Okay, so we will let you folks get some lunch, and we'll be back here for 1 o'clock for Abaca Drabble. Thank you very much. Oh, one quick thing.
It looks awesome.
Right.
They're loving it. Where's it going to be available from?
Oh, right. Yes. Okay. Yep. So the release is from Epic, isn't it? So it's through the Epic launcher, and it's on Xbox Game Pass. So if you've got an Xbox Game Pass, you'll be able to get it pretty much immediately in terms of what's that.
Yeah, so it'll be released in September this year. Be released on the Epic Games Store. Be released on Game Pass for PC and Xbox.
Right. Yeah.
And then next year we'll be looking at bringing it to other stores as well.
Yeah. Thanks, folks.